5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Full course yellow is deployed. Full course yellow is deployed.
Yes, hello everybody, and welcome once again from the City of Lights and the wonderful Olympics. My God, it's been glamorous here. It's been absolutely wonderful, and it's gold, 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 and it's just people are winning things from break dancing and skateboarding and playing pinball and God knows what. So no motor racing at the Olympics, which is a huge oversight on their part, I would think. But anyway, we'll have motor racing here tonight. This is, if you're watching for the first time, this is full course yellow. This is just a chat between a few mates. Get together on a Wednesday night, have a chat about motor racing. Brought to you by the program In Pit Lane, which returns live Tuesday night at 9 o'clock on the In Pit Lane YouTube channel on August the 27th. I'm putting that all together now. So that's going to come up very quickly. But we've got a bit to talk about tonight. Big weekend in Queensland last weekend with the Speed Series, and to talk about that amongst other things is speaking from Queensland is Mark Jones once again, and locally is of course our floor manager and Formula One tragic, the one and only Peter Johnson. G'day guys, how are we?
All right, how are you?
Oh, spectacular! Thank you, Brett.
Sounds like you had a good weekend, Mark.
Oh, it was great fun. We had about 6 or 7 different national series running around up here at the Paperclip at Queensland Raceway, and Queensland Raceway always provides, with all those big long braking zones, it always provides really good racing, and we certainly had plenty of that, plenty of drama. Of course, we saw, unfortunately, quite a bit of GT3 spare parts donated to the racing gods on Friday, and then again on Saturday, and then we had a Toyota 86 tip over onto its roof on Sunday as well. And
that was a bizarre one, that Toyota. I mean, you wouldn't have thought it would be going, and suddenly it launched. It just took off, and locked wheels with someone, and off it went. It was in the air and over on its roof and sliding along. So that was
Jack Wood,
one of the
Jack Wood, one of 3 emerging hotshot cousins that are coming through. Have moved up from XL Racing into Toyota 86 Racing is Jack and his brother George and their cousin Alice Buckley have been making some progress into Toyota 86s. Unfortunately, Jack's car ended up on its roof. Rode the wheel with going by memory, I think it was Brock Payne's TFH high services car that is tipped over. The old, as you say, lock wheels, and then it spat the front left corner of Jack's car up into the air, and over she went. It was and skidded for, as you said, Brett, it skidded for a long way on the roof. But we had some fabulous racing in the Toyota 86s, and we got to see some and for those of you who got to see the Toyota 86s, you would have seen a rather familiar name up the top of the on the top of the sheet, or at least a rather familiar surname historically in the person of one Max Gagan, grandson of Ian and grandnephew of Leo, of course. And fabulous to see the Gagan name back in motorsport, and he's and Max is really pushing his credentials forwards. He's
done very well in the I mean, he hasn't been doing it all that long, I understand, and he
only about 3 or 4 seasons, or 3 seasons at most, yeah.
And he's won a few races. He's been very competitive in pretty much all of the races that he's run in so far. So so there's a name, and he's once again, I mean, he's put his hand up and said, "I'd love to run in supercars, of course." So we could have another very famous name, making a comeback into the top level of Australian motorsport. So good luck to young Max Gagan. But the GT cars also
seems to be
on.
oh yeah. Yes, they did. Yeah, and they had some fabulous races. Now, not for the first time, we saw a great duel between Brad Schumacher and Tim Miles on the Sunday race, and the two of them going at it, of course, with their co-drivers, Will Brown with Brad Schumacher, who's doing something in another category as well, I think, Brown. And it's actually slipping my mind who Miles's co-driver is right at the second. At the moment, I be all smart alecky about Will Brown. But yeah, the Saturday race provided a bit of an upset as well, although. Yeah, of course the link I had on screen to feed me those results instead of trying to memorize them isn't working now.
Yes, it's always
Yeah.
the way.
But yeah, the TCRs, of course, were out and running around as well as I'll bring the GT3s back up again when this stuff comes up. GT4s were out running around as well, and oh yeah, go
Well,
on, Brent.
they're getting bigger and bigger. The GT4 is getting one. It's certainly been like you can see the difference that sort of since SRO have taken over the running of the series. The interesting thing for the series, not just here but all around the world, is of course the news that their major naming rights sponsor Fanatech is apparently quite a lot of financial trouble. So
Oh dear.
yeah, so that's that sort of popped out the other day, and there's been no word about what's going to happen. There's another company that's stepping in to buy them, but what that means, if anything, for I think it's Corsair, who are a major computer manufacturer and computer parts manufacturer. I think they're stepping in to buy Fanatech, but there's been no talk about what that might.
And this has happened in the same month as another SRO sponsor in CrowdStrike has been in dramas as well. So it's hasn't been the best of the last month or so for the friends of the SRO.
No, well, I think in general, I think if you have a look at the Nasdaq,
that's it.
I mean, sort of tech companies are falling down left, right, and centre, having all sorts of problems. Even ones that were normally once were considered bulletproof are in trouble at the moment. So it's pretty it's tough times at the moment for everybody. But yes, but at the moment, Fanatech goes on, and GT this week announced that the next round, which is a meeting they're going to run themselves down at Phillip Island at the end of the month, is going to be free of charge to get in, which is a fabulous, it's something that we've been talking about here. We used to, if you watched in pit lane over a long period of time, you remember that we used to, for many years, cover the Formula Renault 3.5 series from Europe, and that was part of their deal. It was always free admission, and they had spectacularly big crowds. And now the European Le Mans series does similar things. So I believe does the Asian Le Mans series. So I think this is a really good idea, and it's like as Phil's saying here, apart from running
GT3.
apart from running the same weekend as the Sandown State Round, which is a pain in the ass for everybody. It'll certainly be a good idea to get crowds there, because for a lot of people, I mean, it's not if you got an alternative, if you're going to be here in Melbourne and you say, oh well, what will I do? Will I go down to Phillip Island, or will I just wander across to Sandown? But you probably, oh no, I'll just go to Sandown. But you might say, well, hang on, Sandown's going to cost me $35 to get, and it's like it's a nice day and it's going to be free, and it's GT cars racing at the island. I mean, it's pretty good to watch. So let's go down there instead. So it's a pretty good idea. I hope it's successful, and it might encourage some of these other sort of second and third tier series where they can to open their doors up as well, because it's much better to be out there. The theory with Formula Renault, when I was dealing with them, is that we would rather have 15 to 20,000 people come in for nothing than have 2,000 people who paid 25, €30 to get in. It's much better. It's easier to. It's a much better spectacle. It's much better for our sponsors. It's much better for the drive. Everybody sort of, it's better atmosphere, better for the tracks long term. They what they miss out on in admission, they pick up in catering and that sort of stuff and merchandise sales. So hopefully it works.
Well, yeah, you remember back in the day, like HRT used to make millions out of their merchandising over the course of the season. The merch is a big part of professional motorsport, and they're an additional sponsor for them, basically. So if you've got that public profile that you're a popular race team, then you can really monetize that as well. I mean, you got to think that some like Valentino Rossi's GT3 team is probably doesn't cost him a cent because of the merchandise sales of VR46 gear. But yes, I did look that up, by the way, that GT3 result. It was Alex Peroni, freshly back from Europe from a couple of seasons ago, who got the win in the GT World Challenge race, the Saturday afternoon race, with co-driving with Mark Rosser in the Audi, just beating Jaden Ojeda in Paul Liciti's Tigani Motorsport Mercedes by 0.4 of a second in the end, after an hour of racing. That was a Saturday race, of course, Sunday race, and the name I couldn't remember of Tim Miles's co-driver was Brendan Leach, the young New Zealander.
Yeah.
In the and
yet
third
another talented,
was
fast young New Zealander.
Declan Fraser and Peter Hackett came home third on the Sunday race. And then you had the 3-hour race that was on Sunday morning for GT4, and that was actually a considerably more interesting race than perhaps it might have appeared on paper. The two McLarens chased hard, but but in the end it was George Madecki and Rylan Gray who brought the new Mustang GT4 home for in the end a fairly narrow victory. The McLarens were the Mustang got a bit of a free kick because the safety car helped them out when they were doing one of their pit stops,
Right.
and they basically gained them half a lap, and as slippery through the air as those McLaren Arturas are, it was enough of an advantage that brutally you could see, not just that it sounds spectacular, the Mustang GT4, it's really quick in a straight line. And so it's maybe a bit slower through the corners than some of the other cars. But the Madecki and Gray did a young Gray, it should be pointed out, son of Jeremy, if memory serves, of Touring Car Masters fame. And they did a really good job in that Mustang, and all power to them. But the McLarens were on top of things as well. Second and third with Marcus Flack and Tom Heyman beating home Nathan Morecambe and Tom McLennan in the two Chas Mostert's two cars, of course, those Method Motorsport McLarens. And it was,
so what about TCR? I didn't get to see any of the TCR, and
TCR. Happy days. Another young Queensland XL graduate like Max Skagen, in the name of Ryan Casher, broke through for his first TCR victory on race 2 on Sunday morning, and that was gorgeous to see. He's proper talented driver, and when he was in XLs, it got to the point when nobody could touch him, and he needed to move on, and he was winning. So he moved to 86s and was winning races there as well. So they made the considerable jump from 86s to TCRs this year as running one of the Gary Rogers Peugeots, and has been close a number of times. But got his first win. The main race, the feature race on Sunday afternoon, well, Tony D was not mucking around. He lit off and stayed out in front for the entire race. But in saying that, we had 10 cars cross the line within 12 seconds after a half-hour race. I mean, you can't really it's you can't say that they're not even these the various TCR
They
cars.
put on some really good. They put on some really good racing, but unfortunately, they're just lacking in that certain something. I mean, the racing is really good. The racing's close, but they just haven't sort of captured the public's imagination, and the whole category really hasn't taken off in the way that I thought it might. Because like as we've said before, pretty much every manufacturer's got a dog in that fight in that market segment. But when you have a look around, it's like, Toyota are building a Corolla, and Mazda have got a Mazda 3, and
Yeah,
this one have got, and they never, you
that's
never
not
see
happened.
them.
It's yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah, like
think
there is only the one Japanese manufacturer in TCR in Honda. And to some extent, that's explained by the Renaults are basically a sister company with Nissan, of course, and the Renault Megane TCR actually uses a Nissan engine.
But that's not sort
So
of big
there's
around at the moment. Pete, you want to say something?
I think part of that is the broadcast deal. Sure, it's on free to air, but I find with my television when it's on 7 Plus, I can't get it till after the events happened. I can't get it. Can't seem to get it. I can go on 7 Plus, but I can't get it while it's happening, and it comes on later. And also, um, and they've stopped putting at least a TCR race and another the Trans Am on the secondary 7 channels on in the afternoon, and so I think that's had an effect. But also, to me, they're treating it with a bit of disrespect by commentating remotely. I think.
That is noticeable. I mean, people say, "Oh no, you don't notice it," and all the rest of it, but you do notice it. I mean, this weekend, they at least this weekend they had Greg Rust on location up there, so so at least to do the
and
interviews
Richard
and
Craill was there on Friday.
Richard was there on Friday, but I think he'd come back to Melbourne, and of course
Yeah.
Tom Randall, our mate Tom, was roped in and did some stuff, and was certainly good from the stuff I heard. But I didn't, as I said, I didn't see a lot of it. I mean, I watch the streaming service rather than the secondary channel, and you basically get everything. On the 7 Plus app on your smart TV or with a Chromecast, which is what I'm using. So you basically get the lot there, but you also, of course, the category that has taken off there is of course is Trans Am. That's when you're there. I don't know what it was like up on when you were there on the weekend on Sunday, Mark, but certainly when I was down at Phillip Island for the last round, you knew when the Trans Ams were coming on, because suddenly the lines at the cafe to get your egg and bacon rolls in the pit cafe suddenly got very, very shortened very, very quickly, because as soon as they fired up, everybody left and hit the fences pretty quickly so they could watch the Trans Am. So that's a category that's that really does seem to be going pretty well at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. They had 21 cars there over the course of the weekend. Lost one or two early, but yeah, there was some. Certainly you could tell the new the new buildings at QR of both the new pit built up pit area and the corporate facility have open air. Well, not open air. I mean, they've got shade sails and stuff over the top of them now as well. But yeah, there's you can stand on the top and you have a great view out of the track. And certainly they filled up with everybody that was. There's certainly got great crowd up there to watch it. QR itself actually was pulling some really nice crowds anyway. Like we had cars all lining the entire length of the circuit. Cars that people have driven in and parked up of the
The
up
crowds have been
against
a lot better
the
this year.
circuit.
I
So
mean, the crowds down at Phillip Island were quite good as well. So people are sort of getting are getting more sort of interested in it, and I think the fact that they've moved on to 7 has certainly 7 Plus has certainly helped them with the package there rather than the stand thing, which of course very few people were watching. But now with the 7 Plus thing, there's a much there's a far greater audience, and I think people are taking more of an interest in them. But yeah, it'll be.
They've got great grid. Like the drivers that are running in the Trans Ams is properly spectacular. You've got Todd Hazelwood, Nathan Hearn, James Moffat, Jordan Cox made a guest showing this weekend. James Golding's running it in it as well. Jordan Boys, Elliot Barber, Brett Holdsworth. They've got
It's
they've got proper
interesting.
superstar.
It's interesting that
It's
they
it's
had that of course Nathan Hearn was disqualified for ride height infringement, and as he pointed out, and it was I can see why he's so angry. He said because the cars were left sort of sitting around in Parc Ferme for ages, and he said that in the meantime the tire temperatures obviously went down dramatically, and the pressure went down dramatically, and he suddenly went from having about 24 to 26 psi in his tyres to having about 16, and he said that was just enough to just dropping that little bit that little bit under the level that he needed to be under the maximum, the minimum ride height, but. So that was unfortunate for him. The other controversy that's come out of it is subsequent to the event, the Trans Am people have announced that they're going to allow a new gearbox into the category, a Hollinger gearbox, which they say is going to be a lot more robust. And it's interesting that our mate Elliot Barber, of course, who was a very experienced Trans Am driver, was sort of saying, look, this is just not necessary. There's nothing wrong with the gearbox we've got. It's the same gearbox that runs sort of all over the world in these cars. The reason that a lot of the older drivers have been, the more experienced drivers are given for these gearbox failures is basically the supercar drivers who he said are just basically flat shifting them and bashing them into gear without sort of treating them with the respect and the gentleness that they sometimes need. So yeah, that's certainly upset a few people, and it certainly upset the people from the TA2 class, because they're sort of saying, well, our cars. The thing was, even though you had two separate series, the rules were basically the same. But that may not be the case anymore, because suddenly you're going to have these cars with the Hollinger gearbox in it, and people say, oh, well, it shouldn't make that much of a difference. But yeah, it's a bit of a worry. It's certainly going to make them a lot more expensive.
Yeah, and I suppose of course Hollingers are pretty much de rigueur in classes like sports sedans, for example, where a robust gearbox is completely necessary for the nature of the cars. I will note that actually there was some social media. I think it was Dalton Ellery who was pointing out that as a young driver coming up, and wasn't one of these supercar drivers, but had issues with the with the original gearbox, and after two gearbox failures, it basically brought his season to an early end last year, and he was being told at the time that maybe he was being a little bit rough on the gearboxes, and but now he seems to think that, well, maybe he was a bit justified by this move with the Hollinger option. So yeah, there are two sides to this to this. There's it's yeah, there's
Well,
but yeah,
hopefully,
there are a brilliant category. I mean, there are the relatively simple. I said relatively. I mean, they've got a relatively cheap body. It's a silhouette style category. So
well, the fact that
the
Nathan was able to update or sort of turn his Dodge Challenger into a Mustang fairly
into a Mustang,
quickly,
yeah.
without any problems was sort of good. I'd like to see some more. I'd like to see some more variety in them. I think it is basically a bodywork swap. I know that in South Africa they were running the TA2. They were running things like Jaguar bodies, Audi bodies, and even Falcon and Commodore bodies on
Oh,
the
wow.
cars over there for a while. I think that they now may have moved away from that, and they've gone back to just running the American bodies to keep in line with the rest of the world. But it's.
I think there are some other bodies elsewhere, like because there's a TA2 series in Scandinavia, and they have some European bodies on the cars over in that series, and of course it runs in Southeast Asia as well. So there are
It's
some
all
other.
over the place. I mean, you have a look. It's become very quite successful in Thailand. Thailand, racing. As we said, I think we said before on this program, racing in Thailand at the moment is going absolute gangbusters, and I would love to get out there and have a look at it because if they always put it live. In fact, I think this weekend even. So this weekend or next weekend, there is the latest round of the Thailand Super Series coming up, and the racing is fab. They've got really big fields in pretty much all of their categories. Their version of the Super Utes are pretty cool. They've got basically their version of the Nuggets, like they've got the little Honda Cities and the Getzers and the Mazda 2 and all the rest of it running around, and they put on some fabulous racing. So that's really big over there, and they've got the TA2 cars. In fact, and I've just think who is Jason Ojeda, I think is running a TA2 car in Thailand. He's going over and driving for somebody. I think it's Jaden.
I'm no, it's Robotham.
Oh yeah, Joe. Of course,
Jalen Robotham.
And knew it was someone who'd been on the show. Yeah, so Jaden. Yes, that's yeah. So
well, Jaden and Jalen, they're reasonably close as far as names go.
So he's going. There's a long way from the bakery in Central Victoria up to Thailand. That's for sure. So but I'd certainly love to go. And certainly when a couple of years ago when they started to take off, I thought that'd be a good adventure. I think that'd be a good little adventure to take the camera across and follow around, particularly the street races, Bangasen or whatever it's called. That looks like a whole heap of fun. But of course, these things are very expensive, so I won't be doing that as well. But Paul just pointing out, checking Ad Cafe, yes, as well. The Roland Dane publicising our show. Yes, I saw that too. Where are the full course yellows? I thought, no, I won't be so obvious as to turn it into a plug and make a comment and say, well, it's here on the In Pit Lane YouTube channel tonight at 8:30 Eastern Standard. But certainly they let us in there. But I haven't read that. I must admit I haven't seen that one. I haven't checked out his column for this week. Phil saying TA2 needs to go Australia. Chuck in a Monaro, Charger, and Falcon Coupe. This is something that somebody said to me just recently. That if you're going to have, in terms of like what replaces the Camaro, ultimately what replaces the Mustang, because you can't, the Mustang's for sale, but the Camaro, who knows if anything's going to replace that. And someone said, look, if you're going to have cars that people can't buy, and the bodywork is sort of generic, why don't you just chuck replica? Go. We see how popular the TCM is. Why don't we just chuck old Commodore and Falcon bodies and Chargers and Monaros and all that sort of thing on, and just turn it into a nostalgia format? It'll probably get much bigger crowds.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's kind of where I guess that's kind of the territory that maybe because they've tried a couple of times to restart the former third tier series, and I don't mean Super 3. I mean the V8 Touring Car National Series. They tried to get that back up and running again this year, and it's. Was it this year or maybe it was last year? They tried to restart the category because even Super 3 themselves are struggling quite markedly. But the point being the V8 touring cars is, in theory, a place that could launch, older older body-shaped cars into a nostalgia format. Of course, they're running older supercars, and
Of course,
while it might
I mean, the
be cheaper
category
to
for
get into a
yeah,
an old supercar, they've still got
for
supercar
that, of
running
course,
costs.
is
So yeah,
the category for that, of course, is sports sedans. I mean, and that's where you
oh.
can basically run everything. We saw at Winton on the weekend. That's what I was sort of watching more than
Of
what was happening up
course.
at Queensland was the stream from Winton. And I must say that the historic sports sedans, we had Mark Sully on the show last week.
Mm,
The historic sports sedans looked $1 million running around. It was
really.
beautiful. Beautiful conditions there. Lovely, bright, sunny day. That beautiful sort of clear blue skies that you get up around that part of Victoria. And it was just absolutely magnificent conditions. And if you get an opportunity, go onto Ian Smith's Facebook page. And Phil is actually Phil was there, and that's what he's doing at the moment. Actually, he said pointed out that he's editing the Festival of Speed pictures that he took on the weekend. So check those out, because they really do look $1 million, and they were the highlight for me. They were the highlight of the weekend. The other thing, of course, we didn't mention just quickly. The other category that was up at Queensland was the open wheelers, the
Formula Open.
Formula
Yep.
Open. Tim Maggrove's
And,
thing, and I saw none of that. So, but I believe that was a
oh.
pretty good race as well.
Yeah, there's quite the rivalry going at the front of the field between Ryan McMillan and Miles Bromley. The unfortunately for the local guy Bromley, McMillan was able to clean the weekend for him, and there was a bit on the feature race on Sunday afternoon. Bromley actually led for much of the race, and that race actually was fantastic to watch as McMillan hunted Bromley down to try and get in front. And the pair of them had a fantastic scrap for several laps until McMillan was able to finally get past. And but yeah, no, sometimes you only need two cars to have a really good race, and that's what it was like in the Formula Open. Their numbers were a bit down on the weekend. There wasn't quite 10. Oh no, there was 10. Yeah, there was exactly 10. There were 6 Formula 3s, and 3 Formula 4s, and one that was somewhere in between.
They also, speaking of Formula 4s, they also had them at the state round in New South Wales on the weekend. Not sure how many were out there. I know that I was talking with someone today. In fact, a former Victorian Formula Ford champion, Cade Southall, was roped into working on one of the teams that was successful. And their next round for their, it's sort of this, it's almost a secret, this Australian Formula 4 or Australasian Formula 4 champ, whatever they're calling it. But the next round is actually at Sepang in Malaysia. So they've targeted this series very, very much at the sons of rich fathers from Asia in the main. And so the next round will be up at will be up at Sepang. So obviously there's plenty of money floating around, but I don't think the fields are particularly big, and there's no coverage of them. There's no live streaming, as far as I could see, covering them at all, which is a bit of a shame. But if they want to promote it, particularly if they want to promote it into the Asian market, you'd think that they'd want to get it out there as much as possible. But it's becoming harder and harder for a lot of. We saw the last round of the state series wasn't live streamed because they had insufficient entries, and I think that I think Mark's got here about the entry fee for Sandown. I know that there will definitely be coverage there because they've got the national sports sedans, and I think National Formula Ford are running there for that weekend, so they'll definitely have the live streaming there. But I spoke with the organisers of the Australian Hill Climb Championship today online about doing some live streaming, and they just said, look, we just can't justify the cost. It's just there's no return on it. The sponsorship isn't there. The numbers aren't there. If we do it as a pay-per-view, you're not going to get the numbers. that you need to cover how much. And I'm going to talk to them. I mean, we could certainly do it for way less than they've been quoted. They've been quoted, like really, really big amounts of money. But it still costs a lot. It does still cost a lot of money to do, because you've got to take sort of 6 or 7 people out there for 2 to 3 days, and all those people need to get paid. And that's going to just the people cost is going to cost you $8,000 to $10,000 over those 3 days. So it's not a cheap exercise, unfortunately. But everybody would like it. But it's not cheap to do.
Certainly in the midst of that sort of thing at the moment, actually, because it's only 2 weeks now before the historic Lebanon Sprints event that I'm always very keen to be a part of, and that's an event that's streamed, and that's with the assistance of some very generous sponsors, and we're very thankful for to be able to do that each and every year from mighty Lebanon Sprints. I do love that event. So
it's
so
always you've always said it's
only
it
10
seems
days.
It always seems to be very, very popular, and hopefully, it'll be good. It's good to know that that's getting some coverage as well. Hopefully, as I said, we'll be able to work something out. I mean, because it comes down to, the problem is, a lot of people look at it and they all want sort of the full broadcast standard. They want the 6 cameras and and the scaffolding and the graphics and all the rest. All that stuff costs extra money. If you just want to cover something for the sake of covering it, we can work something out to get it out there. But then, of course, you get all the idiots online going, it doesn't look like Foxtel. Why doesn't it look? Well,
Of
Foxtel is
course.
spending $40,000-$50,000 on it. We're spending $5,000 on it. But anyway, as Paul says, seeing the Tomo type 3, that was the reason I would have loved to have gone up there, because I've been to 2 meetings where since that thing's come back, and it hasn't run at either of them. Its debut at Baskerville last year, we literally arrived just in time to see them putting out the fire.
Oh,
The taxi drove through, and Jason, who was alongside me, our cameraman, he looked up and he said, there's a car on fire. And I'd been telling him about this amazing replica of this amazing car that was such a part of my, of me growing up. And I was, I'm just so looking forward. We'll do a story on it. It's going to be fantastic. Looking forward to so many. And he went, there's a car on fire. I went, that's no good. And I got out of the car and I looked over the bit of a hill and I went, oh no. And that was it for the weekend. Thankfully, it wasn't badly damaged, but it was enough to keep it out of both that meeting and Sandown the following week. So it's run at Malala. It's run at obviously run at Winton on the weekend, and it looks like it'll run at the next round at Morgan Park, and then later in the year, hopefully at Sydney Motorsport Park as well. Hopefully at Morgan Park, that Jaguar, the Trenoweth might bring out that Jaguar to join them if he doesn't have too far to drive. So that'd be fun.
Oh yeah, that V12 sound is that's a sound that you don't get every day in most motor race meetings around the country, and love the sight and the sound of both the I say both, but there's been about 4 V12 Jaguar sports sedans over the years, but the two Trenouth owned cars that came through and were driven by I think both of the Scott boys drove them. Certainly the second one, but Gary Scott, I should say, drove the both of the Trenouth Jags as well. So they're and like the original Eggs McCormack car, which was the first of the Trenouth Jags, is the that was like one of the vanguard cars when Group U's historic sports sedans began. It was like this is the standard. This is our flag bearing flag bearer race car, and
Yeah, it'd be good.
always
It'd be good
joy
to see that. As we said last week, there's a few cars floating around, and hopefully we'll get to see more of them. I know there's another Monza. I think it's the ex John Chambers Monza is being rebuilt at the moment. There's a whole bunch of sports today, and of course there's new sports sedans around the corner. I've been following for a long time now the building of what has now become Michael Robertson's new car, which is a Mustang that started life a long time ago out at Riverside Racing, and now Darren Hossack and Ron Hossack have sort of taken it in and are finishing the car off for Michael, and it's an absolute work of art. But as sort of Darren keeps saying, that this is not a production. This is the weakness of the strength and the weakness of the category. Is that these cars are sort of, they're bespoke, they're handmade, they don't come off a production line out there. You can't sort of spin them out at the rate of one or two a week. I mean, they take, and Darren was saying about just getting the ducting right for to get the hot air from out behind the radiator and putting it to where they need it to be for aerodynamic purposes. Getting that ducting right has been a major delay for many weeks now. So like many months. So he finally believed they've got it, but it looks fantastic. So we're looking forward to that coming up. Before we wrap up, let's not obviously they're on a break in Formula One. The latest news is that Adrian Newey will not be going to Ferrari. Apparently, they believe that the rumor going around, the stories in Europe say that he's knocked that back. So, Pete, what do you think, Aston Martin or out of it altogether?
I think maybe out of it altogether. He's expressed the desire. He's getting a boat built, or it's already built, and he's expressed the desire to go sailing around the world or something like that. So I think out of it altogether.
Yeah, I mean he's got his collection of historic cars as well that will no doubt keep him occupied. I'm just wondering, because of his involvement in the design of the original Valkyrie, whether there might be some sort of input. That's why I thought Aston Martin might be the go, because even on a part-time basis, as they're sort of building up that car to race in the World Endurance Championship and an IMSA next year, you might think that perhaps he might have some sort of contribution to that. But that car's testing at the moment. The other thing for hypercars is increasing. The rumours are growing stronger that Ford might be getting involved. Apparently, there's been some. They were certainly, obviously, at Le Mans with the GT3 Mustang, and but apparently they've been sniffing around. Senior executives have been seen at all of the IMSA rounds, going around having a look at the hypercars and the GTPs. And the rumor going around is that they might be at some stage. And they're talking about it being a full hypercar, and perhaps a hypercar based on the last generation of the Ford GT, but with all of the added freedoms that they can run under hypercar. So that might be interesting. Anything, Pete, that you've got from Formula One that
No,
is happening, or is just everybody relaxing at the moment?
Everybody's relaxing. Liam and Daniel had their filming day, and Perez and Daniel are staying where they are at the moment. So, yeah.
It's interesting. We discussed it last week. Sort of, Doc brought it up, the fact that supposedly Liberty Media were involved in the meeting regarding Perez, and I've heard from some sources in America who have pointed out that they said that Liberty Media were very, very keen, and were sort of saying very openly to people who would listen at Red Bull, is if you're going to make this decision, don't make it until after the Mexican Grand Prix, because apparently the ticket sales for the Mexican Grand Prix haven't been what they expected them to be. And they said that a lot of that they felt was people going, well, if Sergio's not there, neither are we.
We're not going.
So
I think I think there's still very much faction within Red Bull, and I think there was a lot of disagreement about retaining Sergio and moving Daniel up, and I think there's still it's very much fashionalized. I think still.
Well, certainly,
they-
while the team are saying like he's there for the rest of the season, Christian Horner is sort of saying that his words is he's there for the moment.
Yeah, and Helmet saying no, he's there, and there's no movement. So I think there's still very much factions. I think they need to either get rid of. Well, I don't think they'll get rid of Christian, but I think they need to get rid of one of them. I think to either Helmet
It
or
might depend.
Christian.
It might depend on what sort of Max is doing as well. So that's
Yoss for that matter.
yeah. That's because Yoss and Christian have obviously got a big problem with each other, and Max may not be. If they ended up losing the constructors championship, as it was pointed out, somebody pointed out, I think it was John Watson who pointed out that the difference between first and second is around $30 million.
Yep.
And well, if that's the case, remaining loyal to Sergio is he's gonna that's a hell of a lot of loyalty, $30 million worth of loyalty. So you might, so depending on what happens when they come back, they might just sort of look and say, if we're under real pressure for the last few races, no matter what we said to Sergio, if he doesn't perform and we think we're going to actually lose this, it might be a time to throw Daniel in there just for the last few races and hope that he can at least finish in a reasonable position to get some points.
Yeah.
And qualify further up the grid. I mean, that seems to be. I mean, okay, Sergio did qualified front row last time out, and it just needs more of that to, get himself in a better place.
The problem was he went backwards. I mean, like this is the thing. I mean, it was if he'd have. I mean, okay, you weren't expecting that he'd probably win, but you would expect that after starting from that position, he would probably finish in the top 4 or 5. But he just kept going backwards and backwards and backwards, and it wasn't too much of a difference, between sort of where he ended up finishing back in 8th and where Daniel ended up finishing back up in what was eventually 10th. There wasn't that much. There wasn't that much difference, and Daniel was coming back from a lot further.
And Daniel on the soft tyres wasn't making any ground. He was just sitting in that position. On the soft tyres,
Yeah,
it's funny. I saw the interview
with they hoped maybe.
Yeah.
I think the thing is, I think that Daniel, looking by the interview in motorsport.com, which I've got sort of it's referring to at the bottom of the in the ticker down below, is I think that Daniel's pretty much resigned to the fact he's sort of saying, "Hey, look, I really want to stay in there. I think I've got a role. I think I've got something to offer teams. I think I've got something to offer Formula One. But I made it. I've won Grand Prix. I've made a career out of this. I've been very, very lucky. And if at all, if at the end of the year there's no room at the end when, okay." I've had a great time. Thanks a lot, and time to move on to something else. So I think he's sort of putting it in the back of his mind now that this is that there might not be something for him at the end of the year.
Yeah.
But anyway,
as been saying that. Has Daniel still been saying that he'd sort of prefer going if there was a future beyond 2025, he'd prefer to be a test driver for F1, then move on to IndyCar or sports car racing. I think was
he's never shown any great
shown
any great interest in any of those things. I know that there's a few times that he's been interviewed and they've asked him about things like Le Mans and the World Endurance Championship and IndyCar, and he sort of went, "No, I've been focused on Formula One. Formula One is it." And at the moment, I think it's a bit like Mark, perhaps it'll be like Mark, where perhaps if he's out for a couple of years or something, he might get the itch again and go, "Oh, well, if there's an opportunity, if Aston Martin said, "Hey, Daniel, we don't have any room for you at F1, but we've got a couple of these Valkyries running around." He could even get a job at Team Yota, who have taken over. They're going to run the two-car Cadillac team in the World Endurance Championship next year, because the World Endurance Championship are changing their rules to insist that all hypercar teams are basically two-car teams. And Yota, who are currently running a factory, sort of a customer Porsche, are going to be running the car for Cadillac in the World Endurance Championship, and it's a long-term deal too. So, and that's another reason why they think that Ford are very interested, is that Ford are looking at Cadillac, and particularly what they did at Le Mans and the publicity they got, and sort of saying, Cadillac wins Le Mans might be a headline that we're not saying. We've already seen Ferrari wins Le Mans, and even if we win GT3 LM, it's not going to make the headlines that actually winning outright does. So, perhaps we do need a dog in that fight. So let's keep our fingers crossed. And of course, there's still huge rumours around that Hyundai are going to get involved at some stage. Apparently, they're leading sort of. There's a lot of their top executives were at Le Mans as well, and were also in Brazil, and have been to a number of IMSA meetings as well. So it's clear that they're having a look at it. But,
wow, why not a Genesis GT3 at some point as a stepping stone to that, maybe, or something like that?
Well, they're so heavily involved in other. I mean, obviously, with the TCR and the World Rally Championship and all that, and the rumour is going around that they're sort of tiring a bit of the World Rally Championship, and TCR isn't taking off and giving the sort of exposure that they would have wanted. So, perhaps they could sort of say, okay, well, we've got the racing unit there in Germany. We've got engines that, we've got a 2-litre 4-cylinder engine that could possibly be hopped up a bit, and probably pop out a lazy 600 horsepower here or there. Perhaps there's an opportunity.
For the Acura hypercar engine, is notably smaller than the others, and yet it's still competitive.
Well, they're the other ones that really haven't put up their hand in terms of the World Endurance Championship, because they have been successful. And the thing is, if they win the North American Sports Car Championship, if they end up sort of taking the champions, they get an automatic invitation to Le Mans anyway. Now, do they turn around and say, no, thanks, we don't want it? Or might that be enough for them to go, well, as we've got an invitation, yeah, we might as well go. It'll be good.
I think the Acura's not being at Le Mans is the biggest single missing ingredient. I mean, in saying that, Le Mans doesn't really need they're doing absolutely fabulously off the back of this. But mind you, you say that about the Acura's winning the IMSA series, that's maybe not. I mean, the points are close, but it is a Porsche 1-2 at the top of the table,
at the moment,
and they've only just run last weekend at Watkins Glen, and that was another Porsche victory, and and the Cadillacs are running 3rd and 4th, so the Acuras are kind of fighting over 5th place at the moment. The two. Well, at least I suppose the Acura's are ahead of BMW, so that's something they can.
Well, that's the other one.
The points are actually fairly close, so it's certainly second place is in reach, but it's starting to look like that. Dane Cameron and Felipe Nasser are starting to look, with only 2 rounds remaining, it's starting to look like they're they've got 100 points, exactly 100 points over their Penske Porsche teammates, so they're starting to look, it's starting to look really good.
Yeah, I keep forgetting. I mean, sort of, it's all coming to a sort of it's all winding down a bit in America. Because the Petit Le Mans, which is the final round, is usually on the same weekend as Bathurst, I'm not sure about this year. It might even be. I think it's the week before this year. But yeah, so we don't have that far away to go before that all winds down. So
And
yeah,
IndyCar
that's a little
famously wraps up before the football
IndyCar.
season
Yeah,
starts.
yeah. Well, that's the other thing too. So I think that they're going a little bit longer in because of the break for the Olympics. But apart from
Oh yeah,
because the
yeah.
NBC, of course, cover the Olympics. But apart from that, I think that I think that the chances of having sort of a Honda or Acura, whatever they go under at Le Mans, would be a big boost because then it might get
Yes.
some of the other Japanese manufacturers that are interested. Because I remember sort of talking with people at Malaysia because Super GT is going back to Malaysia next year, and I was at the last round that they had of Super GT quite a few years ago. The last round they had at Sepang, and I spoke to a few people there at various press conferences in terms of the strength of Super GT and where it was going. And pretty much all of the people from all of the from all of the factories said, "We don't really. None of us want to be here. It's just, but if Honda are here, we have to be here. If Nissan is here, we have to be there. Well, if Toyota are here, we've got to be here." So it was one of those things that's like, if if the other two just we'd disappear like that because this is costing us an awful lot of money. But at the same time, while ever they're there, the other two are there. They want to be there, but obviously that hasn't worked with Toyota. So yeah, let's see what
Well, yeah,
happens.
we've got the one Japanese manufacturer in each of the two major hypercar series. So it's why can't why can't we just have Toyota and Honda on the same track together? That's well, I don't know.
yeah,
Maybe I'm
it
just
would.
being idealistic. Maybe that's part of that the Acura's situation. Know that Toyota have this strength that up until now that only Ferrari has been able to match them. Although we say that now, and Porsche's leading the world championship as well as the American championship. So yeah, so Kevin Astro may end up being the world champion for the hypercars there as well as well Astro and his co-drivers. So yeah, we could see. My sentence fell apart there all of a sudden.
Yes, well, I think
Oh
I
yeah,
think
yeah,
we're
yeah.
getting.
About yeah, where how keen Acura may be to take on Toyota with the current advantage that Toyota has.
I think that might be part of it because I know, like, I think it was. I think it's been, very good that the Porsches have been so competitive in the World Endurance Championship, and because it shows that the GTP cars can win. It's not, it's not, even though there still seems to be something of an advantage for the proper hypercars, but the GTP cars certainly do stand a chance of winning at the moment, and that seems to be the appeal. That's the apparently that was the thing that Hyundai have said that's if they came in, they'd probably come in with a GTP car simply because like they're there. Unlike Toyota, who are there for sort of actual development reasons, and to look at things that they can technology they can apply to their road cars. Hyundai have basically said, no, we if we get involved, we're there for marketing, and we don't need to build the chassis. We don't need, we need to build the engine, and we need to have the car, look a little bit, like here and there, like some sort of, it's come out of some sort of
Mm,
Hyundai or
mm.
something. But basically, we just want to sort of we don't want to be spending stupid amounts of money on it, and that's what GTP's allowed them to do. It's like
Yeah.
they can they can go out and
Well,
get
it's not
basically
just Porsche because Cadillac is pretty competitive as well, and
yeah.
and even with and of course that leads into the whole thing with Jota moving in with Cadillac because of course they were looking for a new partner, having announced quite early in the season that they and Chip Ganassi were going their separate ways at the end of this year. So we've been kind of waiting on this announcement of what Cadillac's plans were for 2025.
And when you look at what Jota's done with that customer Porsche, I mean, sort of, it is a customer Porsche. It's not a part of the works team or anything. They've already won round. They've been very competitive. They were competitive straight out of the box. So you would imagine that sort of, running a proper factory team, that they're probably going to be pretty competitive. So yeah, that'll be good. I mean, sports car racing is, absolutely booming at the moment. The only problem is right now for the World Endurance Championship is all the remaining rounds are sort of around the American continent. And it basically means that they run at some, ungodly hours of the morning, and they're not particularly television friendly to watch them live. But yeah, so anyway, look, I think we might call it a day there. That's sort of killed an hour. I did actually watch the MotoGP. It looked like Martin was going to run away with it, but he got overhauled in the end. But it wasn't. It was okay race. It wasn't one of the more exciting MotoGPs I've seen in recent times, but it was out there. But they're back again. There's still no word from about Jack Miller on any form. As he said, the phone stopped ringing, and no one's talking about him running next year. So who knows what we might see. Perhaps he'll do a Casey Stoner and come back to Australia and run supercars. Who knows? Anyway, guys, thanks everybody for watching us. Now, I'm not sure what's going to happen next week, because obviously it's a bit quiet at the moment with Formula One, with the break for Formula One and other things. I mean, obviously, when do we get our next supercar round? Is that this weekend or the weekend after?
I was just going to say
the
that
weekend
I
after.
thought that
weekend after, yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say I thought that Jack Miller had already been confirmed for Grassini Superbikes next year.
No, that's apparently all fallen
not.
through.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
okay. I've missed that, unfortunately.
Yeah. So he went there. As I said, Doc not with us this week because he keeps up on all that. But I've certainly been sort of, I keep a bit of an eye out on it. And Jack himself said, look, he's at the moment. He said, I'm just, there's nothing on the horizon, and not just in MotoGP, but also in World Superbikes as well. He said, at the moment, he said, at the moment, I've got nothing. So there's nothing firm, and he said, I'm just waiting there. So my resume is out there, and we'll see what happens. But hopefully he gets a run there. As you see down the bottom, Ducati has signed Di Gianantonio for 2025, and he's going to get a 2025 factory bike running for VR46. He's going to get he's not getting sort of this year's sort of outmoded version. He's going to get the state of the art factory bike for next year as well. So that will be good for him. But running out of options for Jack, unfortunately. Okay, everybody. Hey, listen, thanks everybody for joining us once again. We really do appreciate it. Good day, Box. Thanks for 3 wise men. Well, I don't know about that. I think that's sort of I think we're stretching it there, but we'll say thank you anyway, Box. We appreciate your support. Speaking of support, we are coming back for another edition of a brand new series of In Pit Lane starting August 27th. Now, there is going to be a couple of changes, but one in particular is going to be, as some of you would know, that we have been streaming the show live on our Facebook page, the actual recording of the show of a Tuesday night. We're going to change that for this season. We're going to be moving basically everything to the YouTube channel, simply because the quality is much better. It's far more reliable. And the other thing is, if a lot of people watch it, we actually do pick up a little bit, so that it's a very little bit of money for it, whereas we get absolutely nothing out of Facebook. And Facebook has become, with video in general, Facebook has become very, very unreliable and very, very difficult. They keep putting sort of fences in the road. So coming up on August the 27th at 9 o'clock, live from the studios of RMIT Student Television in the heart of Grand Prix City, Melbourne, will be a new season of In Pit Lane. You'll be able to see that every Tuesday night, and then it will be repeated. The edited version will go to air later in the week on Channel 31 Melbourne and Geelong. It also means if we're going to sort of do it on on YouTube. It means if we sort of continue with this, we've sort of been playing around because we didn't want to say too much about what happened on the show because, you'll watch that tomorrow sort of thing. We're probably not going to bother with that now. We're going to, if you want to watch the show live on Tuesday night, you'll get more up-to-date news. You'll get all of the bonus content. And then if you want to chat, if something comes up that you want to chat about because some silly thing that me or Doc or a guest or something has said, then you can come back here and do that on the following night on Full Course Yellow. Okay, so we look forward to seeing you there. We'll let you know. But if you want to know, sort of up the latest news in terms of what we're doing, stay on the Facebook page, and we'll be posting stuff up over the next few weeks as we get ready for a brand new season of In Pit Lane. Our 28th year on air has started. It's terrifying. Okay. There we go. We've got, just to let you know, penultimate round of the Pro MX series this Sunday at the MX just north of Gympie. That's just up the road from you, Mark.
Yeah, a little bit further than that. It's that's Gympie's the other side of Sunshine Coast from here, but
I actually had years ago. It's one of those things you see online on YouTube channel. People going, dumb things Americans say when they're touring the world. And I did actually have many years ago an American couple come up to me and ask what train they caught to get to Bondi Beach in Melbourne. They got very upset when I told them it was in fact an 8-hour, that was an 8-hour overnight train trip, or they'd have to fly. And it was like, what do you mean what do you mean we can't go there? It's how far away is it? And I said, it's in Sydney. Yeah, okay, Sydney. Well, Sydney's just up there. I saw a sign that said Sydney, and that, it's about an 8-hour drive. Oh my God. couldn't fathom the fact that that it was so big, and they had plans. They then later told me they had plans to also pop up to the Gold Coast and have a look at the Great Barrier Reef because it was there as well. So yeah. So anyway, we will see you all coming up next week. Until then, thanks for watching us, everybody. Really appreciate you turning up, and we'll catch you all next week. See you later, everyone. Bye bye.